Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktsiddhanta Saraswati Namine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. By lunar calendar, February 6th, 1874, Bimala Prasad, the son of Bhaktsiddhanta Thakur, was born. And great Acharya, in our line of disciplic succession, we're going to be hearing about his life and his contributions and many things like that. He lived in this world for almost just about a month shy of 63 years of age. He was a Naishtika brahmachari throughout his life. He maintained strict vows of celibacy. One of the biographies about Bhaktisiddhanta is titled Araya Vishnu. And the name Araya Vishnu came from his father. His father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, very vigorously was engaged in propagating the message of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He found it daunting to make the worldwide presence of Krishna consciousness known. So he prayed to Krishna for Araya Vishnu to appear and help him. And it is understood that his son was that Araya Vishnu who came to help him. When Bhaktisiddhanta was first born, these are well-known historical pieces of information. When he was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck like a Brahmin thread. So that was a pretty nice indicator. He's a special soul. And when Bhaktisiddhanta, because think of the date, he was born in February 6th, Rath Yatra is about 6 months later. And when the Rath Yatra event took place, his house was on Grand Road. So the Rath Yatra cart would pass right in front of their house. And on that particular year, the Rath Yatra cart stopped and wouldn't move for 3 days. And his wife, Bhagavati Devi, she had privileges because she was the wife of the chief magistrate, so she did what some ladies like to do. She placed the child at the feet of Lord Jagannath, which means she went right up on the cart, offered her son to Lord Jagannath, and while doing that, a garland that was around the neck of Jagannath slipped and fell and made a nice circle around the body of the child. So they took that as confirmation. This is the ray of Vishnu that Bhaktivinoda Thakur had prayed for. One time when Prabhupada was speaking about Bhaktisiddhanta, he was going on and on and on, and finally he said, "What can I say? He was a Vaikuntha man." My first introduction to Bhaktisiddhanta was before I knew even anything about the Hare Krishna movement. The situation was, I was a college student, and one of my associates in college was Burijan Prabhu, and we went to the same college together. So many other persons that also became devotees went to that college. And he gave me my first Back to Godhead magazine, the first Krishna conscious literature, which was a Back to Godhead magazine. And I didn't know what Krishna consciousness was. I didn't know anything. And as I was carrying the magazine around with me, along with my clipboard and other books, some people saw that in my clipboard and they said, "Oh no, you're not into that, are you?" And I said, "I don't know what that is. I don't know what you're talking about." But it got me interested enough to read the article. And the article in that particular issue was a part of this essay that Bhaktisiddhanta wrote in 1933, entitled "The Vedanta, Its Morphology and Ontology." So I had to get a dictionary to understand what the meaning of the title was. And then I started reading the article that was in the Back to Godhead magazine. And, being a pre-med student, I was used to reading technical things. So I wasn't intimidated by his language. I had to look up every fifth word from a dictionary and write down the meaning. And, I spent 3 hours of absorption with time just passed and didn't even know what happened until it was, I finished the article. And I don't recall too much of what I read, but I'm very clear about what happened. My consciousness went to a place it had never been before. And from that day, before I knew anything about Hare Krishna movement, I had, and still to this day, have a very high regard for Bhaktisiddhanta. That article helped me become moved. So the publication itself, as you see, the date, it's on the appearance day of Bhaktisiddhanta, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his father. And look closely at what's the design in the middle of the cover of that publication. It's Bhaktisiddhanta's logo for the Gaudiya Math. Here's a blown up image of the logo. That's all in Bengali. And here's what it says in English. Note the left side, it's Vidhi, and the right side is Raga. We'll go through what the logo is pointing out. On the left side, there's Lakshmi Narayan seated on a throne. It's worship. Archan at the bottom, showing a bell for offering arti and incense, Archana. And the scripture that gives direction to Archana is the Pancharatra, like Narada Pancharatra, that section of the Vedas. And obviously up at the top is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and down at the bottom, Guru, Gaudiya, with Tilak. And then on the right side, way over on the right side, there's Radha Krishna under a tree, indicating Raga, the Raga Marg and Vidhi Marg. He was teaching both. And on the Raga Marg, very interesting, notice carefully, not only there's a mridanga, but there's a printing press. Kind of looked like what do you call those things? Where you keep files, file cabinet. Not a file cabinet. There's a printing press. Printing press. And that was Brihat Mridanga. The big Mridanga and the small Mridanga, or regular Mridanga. So that's, and then the scripture that guides that activity is the Bhagavatam. Of course, the holy name is at the center. And then that 6-pointed star, hexagon, it's the opulences on the right side, Shri and Jnana, and at the bottom, Vairagya, so you could say on the right side is Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. That's one of the glorifications of Lord Chaitanya by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. and the left side Aishvarya, and Virya, and Yashaha, fame. So that's his logo, and you'll see it again before we're done. The deity that he worshipped, his Ishtadev, was Gandharvika Giridhari. Gandharvika Giridhari. And there's a very interesting story behind Gandharvika Giridhari becoming his Ishtadev. And there's two versions. But one of the versions comes from Jananivas. First of all, the timing was something like February 2017, 1917. He was in Puri with his father. There was some discord with a Babaji who was very popular, and Bhaktisiddhanta was speaking against what he was speaking. But because he was very popular, Bhakti Vinod Thakur said, I think you should go chant Hare Krishna. It's a nice story. But so he went to Mayapur, and for 12 years, from 1905 to 1917, so a little more than 12 years, he chanted the same number of rounds every day that Haridas Thakur chanted every day. So some of us here on Japa retreats or Janmashtami or Gaur Purnima or something, we have had the experience of chanting 64 rounds. And for most of us, it takes us most of the day. And Haridas Thakur was chanting 3 times 64 rounds. And Bhaktisiddhanta was chanting 3 times 64 rounds every day for 12 years. I mean, that's superhuman. It's not human. It's superhuman. And when he finished that vrata, with 3 billion names, he finished that vrata, and that very shortly thereafter is he did 2 things. He wanted to establish the Chaitanya Mat, his headquarters in Mayapur, very, very close by where he was doing, where his bhajan place was. And so he went with a group of devotees to Jaipur to purchase Radha Krishna deities. So that part of the story is the same. Jananivas has the following version. When they went to shops in Jaipur, they saw a particular shop seller, a Murtiwala, and Bhaktisiddhanta had become attracted to a particular set of deities. And Jananivas' story was the shopkeeper said, your deities are standing over there in the corner. And Bhaktisiddhanta said, how do you know they're my deities? And the shopkeeper said, last night I had a dream. These deities came to me in a dream and said, tomorrow a Mahapurush will come here and will want to buy deities from you. We want him to serve us. So, please take them. I want to give them to you. And so he took the deities to Mayapur and installed the deities in Mayapur, gave them the name Gandharvika Giridhari on the very same day that he accepted sannyas. That's Jananivas' story. So I sent somebody about 5 days ago to Chaitanya Mat. They had an appointment with a pandit and a translator, Bengali translator. And I have a recording of what the pandit said, which is a little different. It starts the same, but where it deviates is when he went to Jaipur with devotees, he didn't find deities he liked, and finally found a pair of deities he liked. And when he finally found a pair of deities he liked, he was told by the shopkeeper, "I'm sorry, I can't sell them to you. They're already purchased by someone else." So Bhaktisiddhanta went back to the room where he was staying. That night, Bhaktisiddhanta had the dream. And the deities came in his dream saying, "We want to be worshipped by you. Go back to the shopkeeper and tell him, we want to be worshipped by you." So he went back to the shopkeeper and told him. And the shopkeeper agreed, "Okay, you can take them." It's mystical. In any case, whether it's this or that, it's mystical. And I'm sure the Pandit knew the history quite well. At least that's the history that he narrated. And so they were established, they were installed in Mayapur. And that was his headquarters. There was a separate room, a separate building, some distance away. We're going to hear some more about how Bhaktisiddhanta set up that temple shortly. When some little of the highlights of his growing up, in mango season in Bengal, mangoes are really, we don't get fresh mangoes, but in Bengal you get fresh mangoes, and they're really nice. It was Prabhupada's favorite too. When Bhaktisiddhanta was a little boy, think of some little boy that's 3 years old, he saw a fresh mango, and he ate it. And then his father found out later he had eaten the mango. And not very good. The mango wasn't offered to the deity yet, and you ate the mango. Not good. So he took a vow to his father, "For the rest of my life, I will not eat mango." And he upheld that for the rest of his life. When his disciples wanted to give him mango, his reply was, "I'm an offender, I can't take mango." Now think about it. A 3-year-old boy saying something like that, and for the rest of his life standing by it. That's not ordinary. When he was 7 years old, his father gave him a Kurma deity. And the worship of Kurma has a particular purpose. It brings stability in one's life. And when he was 7 years old, sometimes we know children that can recite slokas. Well, he could not only recite the entire Bhagavad Gita from memory at 7, but if he was asked to give an explanation, for 10 minutes he could give a comprehensive explanation of any verse in Bhagavad Gita. Chapter 15, text 17, what's the verse? Explain it for 10 minutes. Try it. Ask some children to memorize slokas, and then ask them what it means. Like even just a translation. I don't know. And can you explain it? Bhaktisiddhanta was extraordinary from childhood. When he was 13, his father officially gave him japa beads, not diksha, just gave him japa beads, Mahamantra, and a Nrsimha mantra for protection, etc., what Nrsimha mantras do. And his father, recognizing his unique intelligence, because his father was engaged in publishing, he trained Bhaktisiddhanta from A to Z in publishing. A to Z, like, proofreading, printing, binding, everything to do with, he engaged him, and he was assisting his father in publishing his writings. So he knew the whole system for book publication and its importance. When he was a young man, he formed, I forget the title of it, but it was a group amongst his school friends to remain eternal Naishtika brahmacharis. They had some name for their club like that. He was a leader, so so there were others that went along with him. But he was the only one that maintained it. He maintained it his whole life. And he had an aptitude for Jyotisha. And so when he was still around 20, he was celebrated as the most learned scholar in Jyotisha in the whole country. And that's when he got this title, Saraswati. He was a claimed personality, but he gave it up, consciously, saying this is dealing with the temporary and I'm interested in the eternal. Not that he didn't know or lost his touch with that, but it just shows his aptitude. He went to college, but he didn't complete college because he understood what it means when you complete college. What happens when you complete college and you're from India? Yeah, well, you got to get a job and then you get married. So he didn't complete college because he didn't want to get a job, didn't want to get married. And so instead he became a librarian. He became a librarian for the king of Tripura, look how many years, for 11 years. And when he was a librarian, he read the library. And later, when he would write, he would verbatim, because he had a didactic memory, whenever he would see once, he would memorize it, remember it perfectly. So he would write, something from Chaucer or something from here and there, verbatim from what the book said. He just had that kind of capacity. And during this time, he began some writing. Now remember the year, this is until 1905. 1905 was when he began this vrata of japa. So it's, as being the librarian, he didn't just hang out in the library. He took responsibility for it. This event when he started his chanting of the holy name so many times, he was with his father in Puri. He began writing during this time, and even when he was doing his 3 times 64 rounds a day, he was also active. I mean, it's otherworldly, but he was active. And perhaps that's one of the things he's best known for, is the scholarship with which he wrote, and whether it was in Bengali or in English, the language was really, really high. Really, really high. One of the literatures that he wrote a commentary for was Brahma Samhita. Have any of you read Brahma Samhita in his commentary? The language is higher than the chandelier up there. It's really up there. And I'm working on a project right now of writing a more understandable rendering of all the verses of Brahma Samhita following Bhaktisiddhanta's Brahma Samhita commentary. But Jiva Goswami wrote Lord Chaitanya found the book, distributed hand-copied versions to others. Jiva Goswami made a commentary in Sanskrit. Bhakti Vinod made a rendering of that in Bengali, and he made an English rendering. And you have your dictionary by you when you're reading it, because it's really high. Just the language is high, and the concepts also. When he started his preaching mission, he was very much an exponent of Yukta Vairagya, the teaching of Rupa Goswami. You engage things in Krishna's service. during his time, sannyasis didn't ride in vehicles. They didn't ride in palanquins, or certainly not a convertible. But he wasn't just a car, it was a convertible. And he wasn't supposed to wear sewn clothes, but he wore coats. And he was like, one description is he was riding through the streets of Vrindavan, waving at everybody. You know, making a statement. Yukta Vairagya. Use things in Krishna's service. So when the first time I went to Vrindavan, I'm not sure, I think it was 1974. It was part of the Mayapur Vrindavan festival. And one of the places we were taken to by Guru Das was a temple where Bhaktisiddhanta had established technology to teach Krishna consciousness. And it was very rudimentary. It was kind of like a paper mache or some harder medium topographical depiction of Vrindavan. Over here is Govardhan Hill, over here is Nandagram, over there is Varsana, over there is Radhakund, etc. And so it started over here, at Nandagram, and there's Krishna, the cowherd boys, and to make the thing move, you had to crank manually. And then you could hear a whole series of chains rattling underneath that surface. And there go the cows and the cowherd boys and Krishna, and they're going over to Govardhan Hill. And that's as far as they got. And they have to wind it back, and they go back to Nandagram. But it's the Yukta Vairagya principle. Technology that was available at the time, and using it to depict Krishna's pastimes, visually, or however. That was a ground that he stood on. And he, did it boldly. Now, sometimes he would dress like this, like a very simple sannyasi attire. Notice in most of the photographs that he's posing for, there's a book on his lap, because that's a major part of the printing press in that logo. And sometimes he would dress really fancy, depending upon the occasion, and whatever is appropriate. You'll see some other photographs like this. One of the places that he liked very much was in Puri. Some of you have been to Puri. There's a remote place near Chatak Parvat, very, very close to there, remote, and he would go there in seclusion for his writing and his bhajan. It's one of the Gaudiya Maths in a nice place you see out the window. That's where they are. Here's a little video, and hopefully our technology is going to work. It's a video of someone singing, and let's see how it works, if I can stop it from time to time. But it's little sayings. There's books published on, it's just a collection of his sayings, real powerful sutra-like sayings. So let's see what happens.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
So it's going to work. I'll be able to stop it from time to time. The theme of this statement comes like 5-6 times in just this little short video. He certainly knew trials and tribulations himself and others, but he also knew how to be transcendental to trials and tribulations. I was just discussing this with a godbrother today.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna
this particular item, whoops, and back up. I don't think I can back up. Let me not desire anything but the highest good for my worst enemies. He lived by it. He didn't just say it. Well, you'll see as we go along.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
This very same statement is found in Brahma Samhita commentary. The fire of ordeal is the language he uses in Brahma Samhita. But it's not disfavor, it's favor. It doesn't always feel like it, but it is.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
The photograph, I want to comment on the photograph. The photograph is taken on the occasion of sending 2 sannyas disciples to England for preaching. It was a big, big thing. He had requested each of the Gaudiyamas to make some contribution to take care of the expenses of these 2 sannyasis to travel in England. And so in the middle of a field, he built this big arch. You can see what's on either side and above. And across the top, God bless the king. They were going to England. So, honoring the people of the world, knowing that people of the world won't be able to understand transcendental message, nonetheless he's sending the transcendental message and being appropriately respectful. God bless the king. I like it. He's a gentleman, a transcendental gentleman. Whoops, I'm sorry. Oh, phooey. I did the wrong thing.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
I want to comment something about this. You see him with a beard in this particular photograph, and you also see with a pile of books, because that was his life. During the 4 months of the Chaturmasya, a regular practice year after year after year after year is he would observe strict vows of Chaturmasya, one of which was he wouldn't shave his face or his head. Other paintings or other photos you see has a very clean shaven head. There was, in Chaitanya Bhagavat, he writes specifically, pointedly, that sometimes people say that Advaita Acharya had a beard, but he didn't have a beard because he was a Vaishnava, and Vaishnavas will all keep clean-shaven head every fortnight. Now Prabhupada said otherwise. That's okay. Part of the vow of Chaturmasya, along with not shaving and other things, is he would eat once a day for 4 months. And the way that he would eat was very austere. He would take khichdi without salt. Some of you may have had khichdi that doesn't have enough salt. It's not so palatable. But every day, for 4 months, khichdi without salt. And it was put on a leaf plate in front of him, and he would bend over from his waist, not using his hands, and eat just with his mouth. And he wouldn't sit back up, because as soon as you sat up, then you're over and finished for the day. And when you bend over, your stomach shrinks a little. And every day, for 4 months, he had a messy beard. And that kind of austerity was one of his austerities. He was a very austere person, very strong. One time, it's in his biography that he was invited to go to a king or some VIP type person's place for speaking. And he went. And the king or the person had a pundit. The pundit was envious. So the pundit didn't make arrangement for Bhaktisiddhanta to speak. So he fasted. And he fasted for some days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, whatever it was. And then he left. And the person was like unhappy. He said, "Why? Why are you fasting?" He said, "I'm not here, I'm not a horse, I'm here to be maintained. And if I'm not, there's no service for me, then there's no need for me to eat." And it wasn't like being snotty. That was a principle that he lived by. He wasn't insulting the man or felt insulted. It's just a principle that he lived by. He wasn't that kind of person. Very austere. Okay, here we go.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Notice how straight his back is.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna,
Like I said, there's publications that just filled with so many sutra-like powerful statements. Here's another one. All those conditioned souls who consider apparent impediments to their happiness are harmful, or the cruelty of the Supreme Lord, see only the first move in the chess game. They are unable to foresee what lies beyond the fourth and fifth move. Interesting. He taught that within the verses and pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's unlimited meaning in every verse. To demonstrate, one time, January 33, he spoke for 1 month in Dhaka on one verse from Srimad Bhagavatam and didn't repeat himself. 111 Bhagavatam for 1 month. Now, the same year, he was waiting for Professor Sanyal to complete the Sri Krishna Chaitanya book, which was 2 volumes, very thick, describing the life and teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And it had other things in it also. And on March 18th, it was finally published. It means that the door was now being opened to go to Europe and preach Krishna consciousness. Notice on the cover is that logo, Bhaktsiddhanta's logo. And off they went. The first center was opened in May of 33 and didn't get a lot of traction. They went to Berlin, didn't get a lot of traction, came back. But, he was thinking beyond India. And it is said that he'd not just our Srila Prabhupada, but many others he would encourage, same, preach around the world, take the message outside, all around the world. There's a very nice story that I came to know from Jagatarini, that in 1960, Prabhupada had just taken sannyas. He was still, he hadn't yet moved to the Radha Damodar temple. He was still at a place near Keshi Ghat in a little tiny room. And someone who we met in Delhi gave him a little invitation to attend a human value something, I forget the name of it, something in Japan, 1960, sannyasi with no resource. So he wrote to the man who was in charge of this big event and said, I'd like to participate. So the man sent back a letter saying, come on over. So he prepared from Canto 10, Chapter 20, Canto 10, Chapter 20, it's a description of the seasons, the summer, the rainy season and the autumn season in Vrindavan. It's just the seasons. And Prabhupada was thinking, people in the East, they take lessons from nature. So he wrote Light of the Bhagavad, a 20,000-word submission, including in his submission the name of this organization, this event that was happening in Japan. He didn't have any money. He tried to get people to sponsor him to go. He tried to get the organizer to sponsor him to go. And he couldn't go because he didn't have money, so he didn't go. 1960. Sitting in a little room in Vrindavan thinking how to preach outside of India. Like this. It wasn't until something like 21 years later, the manuscript was found and was published. Tamal Krishnaraj took responsibility in the Hong Kong BBT to publish it. Got an artist, lady in China, to make the drawings that are now available in that publication. And, in Prabhupada's writing became published. But the point is, Prabhupada received from Bhaktisiddhanta everything, and he carried forward as he did, even when he had nothing. It's a great... So, what do we have? We have something. Minus the bhakti that Prabhupada had, we have something. And, use something for the mission. That's what Bhaktisiddhanta was carrying, and that's what Prabhupada was carrying. There's a nice event that took place where, while the devotees were off in Europe, Bhaktisiddhanta was propagating Harinam Sankirtan in India. And on one occasion, they were in the town of Navadvip, as you can see, with a large number of people, with madangas and kartals and having kirtan. And some of the priests and pandits in Navadvip were envious because it was, wasn't supporting their business. So they made a plan to murder him. There were 2 murder plots for his life that are at least, reasonably well known. One of them was somebody went to bribe the police. We're going to bump him off. Please look the other way. He said, no, I can't take a bribe. He's a sadhu. And he went and told Bhaktisiddhanta, watch out. There are people wanting to take your life. This other situation was during this event or something like it, they hired some gundas to bump him off. And, there was a riot, Bengal, there was a riot in the street, and when this riot was going on, there was a grahasta who used his wits and changed clothes. He took the sannyas clothes of Bhaktisiddhanta and gave Bhaktisiddhanta his grahasta clothes so he could, sneak away. So Bhaktisiddhanta was safe. And the newspapers the next day, all over Navadvip, made a big deal about it. The sadhu was being threatened with his life right here in our city of Navadvip. The police found out who did it, who were behind it. They went to Bhaktisiddhanta and asked him if he wanted to press charges. And he said no. In fact, he not only said no, I don't want to hurt them, he said, they did wonderful service. We could never have gotten such publicity about the importance of chanting the holy name. They've done a wonderful service. This is his mood. It turns out, it's a detail, but the person who was a grahasta at that time later became a sannyasi, and that sannyasi's name was Keshava Maharaj, and it's Prabhupada who took sannyas initiation from Keshava Maharaj. in Mathura. Keshav Maharaj was in charge of the Gaudiya Math at the Keshava Gaudiya Math. One of the principal deities established by Vajranath was a deity of Keshava, established in Mathura. And Keshava Maharaj became the in charge of Keshava Math. Gave Prabhupada sannyas, encouraged him to take sannyas, and ordered him to take sannyas. So I think that's this nice photograph. In his writings, naturally he's encouraging Harinam, but naturally he also encouraged speaking Harikatha. And he explained that people in Bengal have misunderstood the importance of Harikatha along with Nam Sankirtan. An overemphasis and de-emphasis, let's say, on Harikatha. So people were chanting, but not having an understanding of scripture. And that opened the door for Sahajiyism and other deviated, non-bona fide teaching, because they weren't in touch with proper katha. So his teaching was that the Harikatha is the Sarup Shakti of Harinam. So the name is Krishna, and Radha is the Harikatha, or the Sarup Shakti of Harinam. We don't worship Krishna alone, and we don't just chant Hare Krishna alone. We chant Hare Krishna and have Harikatha. Nice. And to demonstrate this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to inaugurate the chanting of the holy name, but he also heard every day from Gadadhar Pandit the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, Harikatha side by side with Harinam. Here's a photograph. I'm going quickly because of time. This is a photograph of the governor of Bengal paying a visit to Sridham Mayapur. Bhaktsiddhanta invited him to come. And some of the followers of Bhaktsiddhanta were criticizing him. Oh, what's he doing? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wouldn't meet with Maharaj Prataparudra because he's a worldly person. And here's our guru inviting this worldly person. So why, in a government officer, why is he doing this? Bhaktisiddhanta later revealed his two purposes. He wanted the British to build a road to the Chaitanya Math, which they did. Before the governor came, they had to have a road. He was a celebrity, so the government was willing to come all the way up the Ganges River to visit Mayapur, but they had to have a little road. So once the little road was built, then he could freely send paper, because he had printing presses at the temple, from the Ghat. So the bullock carts would bring fresh paper and go back with printed books or printed publications every day. Compliments of the British government. And the second reason was he wanted John Anderson to confirm that the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was on this side of the Ganges, not over there. You're aware, right? That history? Yes? No? The history is the birthplace of Mahaprabhu had been obscured. Long time passed. Over there on the west side of the Ganges, Navadvip town was built based upon the misunderstanding that over there is the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, and the city grew. Bhaktivinoda Thakur confirmed, no, it's on the eastern side of the Ganges, that's what the scripture says, etc., etc., etc. And that was like, in Bengal, that means you're taking money out of the pocket of the people over there that say this is the birthplace. They're violent. So he had John Anderson come and hear his evidence, and he confirmed, yes, I accept. And not only he said it, we'll make a post office. And it's the birthplace of Mahaprabhu post office. Practically right across the street from the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. That was the second purpose. Very practical. Very practical. And notice how he's dressed. He's dressed in a white dhoti. Now maybe it's photoshopped, but the white dhoti's got a nice little border and for the occasion. Because he wasn't stuck on anything. He was very yukta vairagya, utilize things in Krishna's service. And there they are sitting at a table, and here's a close-up of his photograph. Again, here's a revisiting the temple, Gandharvika Giridhari. On the four corners of the temple, there he placed small murtis of the four Sampradaya Acharyas. Now, when I went there in 1974, the figures were smaller. Now they're larger. That's quite okay. But it was a major part of his effort to not just show the differences between the Sampradayas, but the unity of the Sampradayas. What do they agree upon, rather than a big deal about how they're different? And there is different emphasis, this and that, but they're all centered on Lord Vishnu. And he wrote a book about it, naturally, for Sampradayas. If you're interested in details of this teaching, that teaching, and how they compare and so forth, Bhaktsiddhanta. It's available in English, the four Sampradayas. And, their whole disciplic succession and, the scholarship that Bhaktsiddhanta was known for. Amazing person. I'm just now remembering something. Something he wrote. Forget what was that something that he wrote. Scholars read something that he wrote and said it would normally take a team of 20 scholars 20 years to compile what he did in 1 year. Some writings just like so comprehensive, so thorough, so bulletproof, undeniable facts put together and stitched together. Anyone that's done research on anything, what to speak of spiritual topics, is very complex. A very powerful acharya. And one of his principle, right there at his main temple, is how the four sampradayas should be more unified and appreciate Vishnu Bhakti. A celebrated event. In the background you see Radha Kund. Bhaktisiddhanta took devotees to the holy places of Vrindavan, Vraj Mandal Parikram, annually for some period of time. Here's the painting is of Prabhupada with his son, where Bhaktisiddhanta spoke to him about, if you ever get money, print books. He was lamenting that after the Bagh Bazar temple was donated, a very wonderful marble, magnificent temple in downtown Calcutta, the result of it was some of his leading sannyasis were bickering over who would have which room in the temple, instead of engaging themselves in the mission. So better to sell the marble and print books, was his statement. If you ever get money, print books, which Prabhupada did. And he also built temples, but for the purpose of propagating Krishna consciousness. And this occurred at Radhakund. Around Radhakund, there's a Pushpa Samadhi of both Bhaktisiddhanta and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Here is the sitting place, very interesting design for a chair, and a little small table, as great acharya, but little tiny, facilities here. A little cot, and his walking stick, and his walking shoes. Established by Bhaktisiddhanta was a temple Radha Kunja Bihari shows where the temple is. There on the right side is the temple. In a moment the picture should change and show us the deities at Radha Kunja Bihari. That's not changing, so there's the deities. This is the winter time, so they're all bundled up in nice wool garments. On the left side is his sitting place at the Radha Kunja Bihari temple, and here's the deities, very nicely dressed in winter sweaters. And I think this is our last slide. No, it's not. This is taken from some publication directly. God is the shelter of all. This is available just right off the internet. God is the shelter of all. He sends many obstacles and inconveniences to those who wish for shelter under Him in order to test their ardor and steadiness. Now, I think, it's 7:45, 12 to 8. We got a little bit of a late start, and there was like crazy traffic coming over here. I don't know what was going on. So we started late, and I think we'll end here. For those who wish, I'll go through it quickly. There's a letter from that Bhaktsiddhanta wrote, printed in a Prabhupadera Patravali, describing chanting. So I don't know if I'm going to go through this. I'll make it available to somebody, to you, and you can distribute it. It's his instructions in a letter about chanting. So now you're in suspense. So when you get it in your inbox, you can read it. It's very nice. I plan on making this presentation next time we have our festival of the Holy Name. Bhaktisiddhanta teaching us how to chant properly. So one day late, yesterday was his appearance day, but we had this other program that I hadn't considered. This Six Goswamis event would overlap with his appearance day. So one day late. Any discussion? Yeah. Do we have a microphone? Looks like you're the microphone runner.
Maharaj, I have a few questions. Do we know what is Bhaktisiddhanta's spiritual identity? Is he a manjari or something of that sort?
I'm just noticing all this color. Was this color changing going on the whole time? It's attractive and it's distracting both. So now, you want to know what does it mean, your spiritual identity? You want to know what does it mean?
No, I was wondering if we know Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's spiritual identity.
His spiritual identity. I remember hearing it. It's in the Manjari category, and with the name, but I don't remember.
Okay. Thank you. Also, in one of the quotes, I didn't manage to write the entire quote, but part of it was, "Success depends on their good fortune."
Yes.
It was the quote about the associates of Lord
The
Chaitanya.
outcome of trial and tribulation, it's in Krishna's hand, of course, but it depends on good fortune. Like, I know somebody, I was having a discussion with somebody, a godbrother today, really terrible tribulation he's passing through. And it's not just recent, it's been for some time. So, how's it going to work out? Now, good fortune can be thought of in terms of karma fortune, and good fortune can be thought of in terms of Krishna fortune. And everything depends upon what our orientation is. Krishna bhakti, or relying upon our, good karma. That answer your question? I think so.
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay.
I have more, but I don't want to hog the mic. Somebody else.
My experience is, people are happy to hear your questions.
Okay.
And then it will inspire them to think of questions they want to ask. Maybe even feeding off of a prior person's questions is another way that questions happen. Yeah, I'd like to say something about what they said, and it inspires. So keep going.
Okay, Maharaj, thank you. This next one, I haven't really formulated a question. It's more like a comment and an observation as we went through the PowerPoint. I know when we saw the logo, I've never seen the logo before, actually. I found that very interesting.
Yeah.
But it made me think of how I've often heard yourself share in classes that we should have goals and focus. And so a logo sometime, especially this one, really reminded me of that. And later on you mentioned in one of the photos, or a lot of the photos, he always had books because it's part of the goal.
Yeah.
It was part of his life.
Yes, you got it.
And the other thing I was relating to this is, I was observing how in Bhaktsiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's life, he took a very firm vrat for those 12 years, and then he dived into the mission.
Yes.
And I also think about when Prabhupada spent all that time at Radha Damodar and really praying and begging, and then he went to the West. And so I often think about whether...
We should do the same?
Yeah, I don't think I could do... I don't know about 12 years or... But I often do wonder if it would...
Deep absorption in just hearing and chanting and Krishna consciousness that's internal before going external. Something like that.
Something of the sort. And I'm connecting the two because my difficulty is sometimes I don't know. I mean, I know the ultimate goal, but then the baby steps goals are a bit of a struggle for me at times. And so I often wonder, well, maybe if I just do some kind of severe vrat, then the goal will become clear. I somehow struggle to set those goals for me, so it's just a thought kind of thinking.
Prabhupada I thought about this question a lot. And Prabhupada never encouraged us to, go somewhere and do something that's intense so that we become more clarity and more Shakti, and then we can go and... But rather the austerity, the intensity of austerity for us is staying with the mission. And you stay with the mission, and then it's experience, but plus it's Prabhupada's teaching that there's it's here. There's obstacles and difficulties and tribulations and tests and challenges, and it comes along with the territory of preaching or being. So it's not just the activity. This is my understanding. It's the consciousness of being an instrument of the mission. And when you're conscious like that, whatever it is, someone may be a pujari, someone may be a cook, someone may be a manager, someone may be a frontline preacher, someone may be a book distributor, someone may be whatever they may be. If your consciousness is sold out to the mission, this is like this. There's parts of your life that's over here, and there's part of your life that's over here. And there isn't a necessity to go off and do some intense vrata. Now, it may be or may not be. You know, the vrata that Prabhupada did at the Radha Damodar temple wasn't self-imposed. He just had nothing. Krishna took everything, so he had nothing. And some advice to write, and so he wrote. And he didn't have the money, so he got some money here, and he got some money there, and he got some money at third place, and he printed his 3 volumes. And very intensely absorbed in the mission. His austerity was the mission, with resource, without resource. And when he had resource, he was austere. When he didn't have resource, he was austere. But he was, in all circumstances with the mission. Now that's Prabhupada, is the great Acharya, but it shows the example. He didn't go off and do some intense vrata. His life was austere, even when he had. His life was austere, even when he had, opulence. And he could handle the opulence because he wasn't the enjoyer of the opulence. It was everything, the Yukta Vairagya principle. And when he had nothing, he used what he had. He couldn't go to Japan, but he wrote the book that later got published. And then as his followers, so this is me, little me, I'm starting to plan a seminar for the Chinese devotees during their national holiday, 7 days, morning and night, so that means 14 classes on Light of the Bhagavad. And giving them the whole background of how it came into being. And photographs of the artist who's from China. And Tamal Krishna was taking the manuscript, and so now let's understand what Prabhupada wanted to convey to this audience from the Far East. And that's you guys. So let's hear it. And he selected that particular, so he selected a chapter because people in the East often learn lessons from nature. That's why he selected that section. But he was introducing them to Vrindavan. And Krishna comes out of a box, even in the the autumn season. Carefully. So each of us have a nature, and we just we don't. The short answer: it's not that we need to go off and do some special vrata to get the clarity and spiritual strength. Take the vrata of receiving and giving Krishna bhakti according to each of our natures, and that'll give us strength. That's the vrata that we need, and try not to deviate because it weakens determination.
Thank you, Maharaj.
If circumstance provides it, great, but we don't need to go out of our way and create some vrata. It's good. And Nectar Devotion speaks, undergoing some austerities. So, twice a month. What's, not you have to say to us, but, ask yourself, what's an appropriate, doable austerity without diminishing my regular activities in devotional service, my worship and my preaching and my study and my this and that. What's it doable for me? And then Kartik Vrata, and etc. That's how we do Vrata on those special occasions, and then overall the Vrata about being an instrument in the mission. Next.
This is a follow-up to what I just heard. I really it brought, the whole response brought a lot of clarity. I heard you say that try not to deviate, and I just wanted clarity on what it means, what that would mean.
What would it mean to not deviate or to deviate?
To deviate, like from the vrat, my vrata is a mission, preaching. So
Well,
deviate would mean,
distraction. It's like put your hand in your bead bag and I'm going to chant good japa, and what happens?
oh, okay. So it doesn't mean deviate like to
No, it
not
doesn't
do
mean,
some
no,
other
don't
type
go
of.
don't go
okay.
away from that higher principle,
Okay.
the higher purpose, the mission of life. And the mission of Lord Chaitanya is the mission of life. So don't become complacent or foggy or, distracted or. That's deviated. That's what I meant by it.
Thank you. I have one more question.
Yeah.
Gandharvika Giridhari. I could probably just Google this, but I don't know where the name Gandharvika. I'm assuming it's a name of Radharani.
Yes, it is.
And is there something special about it, or is there some background more to it? Or
I don't know. I mean, I have some sense of the import behind that name of Radharani. And, there's Gandharva and there's Gandharvika, a diminutive of Gandharva. It's Radharani who sings very beautifully. So it's kind of an endearing and personal mood of regard for Radha, rather than just saying Radha. Like, Jiva and Jivakaha. Jivakaha means a small jiva. Jiva Goswami writes that about himself in Tattva Sandarbha. One small jiva. This manuscript was given to me by one Bhatta, who is Gopal Bhatta. Doesn't say by name because he didn't want the name. But one Bhatta gave to one small jivaka. Jiva was a jivakaha. That's him, he's a small jiva. So Gandharvika has that same meaning at the end. Something else we have over here.
Thank you, Maharaj. Always.
Now you're on.
Thank you, Maharaj. Always hearing from you is very inspiring and
It's the
enlightening.
topic. It's the topic is what's inspiring.
Yes, it's just
That's a nice
boost
Lego,
the
isn't it?
bhakti, and this every time we hear about Acharya Guru Parampara Six Goswami is very nectarian.
Mm.
Seems like we should continuously hear like Bhagavad Katha.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I feel like more nectarian than even Bhagavad Katha because it boosts our bhakti. To me, I think
Nice.
it increases the devotion.
Good.
The quotes from the Bhaktsiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj very powerful. All the quotes and the music was very nice too.
Well, you just remind me. On your little cell phone, send me a reminder right now. And I'll send him, and he can send to you all
Thank you so much.
that little video that we saw.
Yeah. And one question that one of the quote Bhaktsiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj says that when we take shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, then all the obstacles comes, impediment comes. But isn't that when we take shelter of Krishna, Krishna help us remove the power pass through the obstacles?
Yes. And that's exactly what's going on when he sends obstacles.
Okay. So is okay.
It's exactly what's going on. It's very simple. From Brahma Samhita, one of my favorite passages from Brahma Samhita. Yas twindragopam atavendra mahosva karma bandhanurupa parabhajanamatunoti karmani nirdahita kintu jabhakti bhajam. Those who are engaged in bhakti bhajam, they're different than the people that are receiving their karma. What's going on with them? What's going on with them is Krishna is purifying them to the very root of material existence by the fire of ordeal. He's purifying by the fire of ordeal. He's taking away the contamination, just like, very simple metaphor, supposing there's gold and you want pure gold. What do? Molten. And then there's impurities that are taken away, and then what's left is only gold. That's what's going on. And then it may feel like, ouch, but it's actually Krishna's taking away by the fire of ordeal. It's lovely. Krishna's being very kind. So I don't want the ordeal. I want purification without ordeal. Sorry, Charlie. You have to let go. And it's part of the letting go. And taking exclusive shelter. Krishna did it with the gopis. And he went and hid and watched them as they were going mad. And he was enjoying. Not seeing them going mad, but seeing them intensify their shelter taking in him. So what to speak of the gopis, even little us, the fire of ordeal.
So the concept is same.
Yes. The position is different, the concept is the same.
Okay.
It's Krishna's kindness upon the gopis, it's Krishna's kindness upon each one of us. And that's through these little nice sayings. There's books written where these sayings come from. You can find out where those books are. But this is a nice start, because nice kirtan along with it.
Thank you, Maharaj. One more thing. I've been looking for Brahma Samhita classes, but I could not find any.
Couldn't find any what?
Classes on Brahma Samhita.
Classes on
Classes,
Brahma
yeah.
Samhita?
I wanted to study Brahma Samhita. I read Brahma Samhita and reciting verses every day, but I was not finding the classes in our ISKCON Desire Tree or anywhere.
I'll help you.
Thank you.
I gave 35 hours plus 35 hours on Brahma Samhita.
Where can I get?
Yes, you can get.
Yeah. Thank you, Maharaj.
You can do this one. Write to Bhaktsiddhanta and ask him to send to you a link where he can get those 2 seminars. And then you can hear classes.
Thank you, Maharaj.
And not only see your classes, see nice pictures.
Oh, thank you so much.
You know me.
It's a bonus.
The visuals helps a lot.
Thank you.
You're smiling. Who else? Behind you.
Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for the classes. It's so nice to hear. I want to ask a specific question on one of the quotes of Bhaktsiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And I don't have the full quote, but it's the one that says, devotees should be ready to shed 200 gallons of blood for the nourishment of
Yes.
the spiritual corpus of every individual.
Yes.
And I'm seeing that in the form, in a way of like serving the Vaishnavas and
Yes.
serving, we should be working very hard to serve so that we can come to the level of getting Krishna's mercy to come to level of understanding. So that's how I'm interpreting it. Is that the correct
Yes.
interpretation?
It's,
Okay.
well, it's a little bit more than that. There's sacrifice. When you extend yourself to someone, generally, it's an ordeal. What they're going through, and you're concerned for them, that what they're going through, and it doesn't happen, doesn't come quickly. It's generally, protracted, ordeal, and be prepared. And that's what the message is. Go through that ordeal, for them, with them, for this higher purpose, not the hospital one, but the eternal situation of the living entity one, and be ready to make all sacrifices and go through all ordeals for that purpose.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Maharaj, for that. And then another question I have is on the lines of, like, sometimes I get the inspiration that maybe I should become like a scholar in bhakti, in the sense of our acharyas, but then at the same time I have to make sure I balance service with bhakti. So, like, and I have this conflicting desire, then I don't make a decision, I end up doing a little bit of service, but not a little bit of, and then, it's not satisfying either. So, I guess, is there a way that I can, stick to one, or how to make a decision?
Well, it's possible you can stick to one, but from the description, you have both natures, and then it becomes time management. When you're doing this, you're absorbed in this. When you're doing that, you're absorbed in that. And you're satisfied because you're absorbed in it, because it's for Krishna. It's not just intellectual stimulation or gratification that I'm making sacrifice and, for a good cause or something like that. That kind of happiness. It's, it's for Krishna. So then you grow both and see where it goes. But part of the, let's say, the service is a kind of purification that enables the intellectual and academic and study side to be, for Krishna, rather than just, mental stimulation, which doesn't endure. It doesn't satisfy. It comes and it goes. So, time management, and stay focused when you're doing each thing. And it starts with how you chant.
Yes.
That's where the real lesson comes, is how you chant. The consciousness with which, because there isn't either when you're chanting. But it's just the holy name. And how you doing when you're chanting the holy name. Not, you don't have to answer me, but that's for you to examine. And then do that nicely, it'll help you in both of these departments. And then you may, for some period of time, more of this, some period of time, more of that. And it's not a problem because you're doing it for Krishna. And Krishna will give some indication, which is most suited for you during a particular period of your life that carries you closer to Him. Yeah? Okay.
Thank you. And last question, I really like the pictures of the deities in the presentation, Maharaj. Is there a way I can talk to somebody to get those?
You want pictures of Gandharvika Giridhari?
Yes.
Most of them, it's really hard to get good, clear photographs. They're often not so clear. Like one of those that I have is not so clear. That's not so clear. But there's one that's really clear.
Yeah. Krishna. So, yeah.
You want a copy?
I would like a copy, yes, sir.
Okay. Send me a text message.
Okay.
He's got something online, and you wait for a host. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much for the nice class.
I was looking forward to come to your home. You were so enthusiastic when you spoke at the temple.
Thank you. Maharaj, I have one question. One of the quote, God is shelter of all. He sends many obstacles and inconvenience to those who wish for shelter under him in order to test their ardor and steadiness.
Yes.
So Maharaj, during your 52 years of your practice, what obstacles you have faced
Oh, I won't
and
tell
how
you.
how you remain steady? If you can enlighten us.
It's attachment. Attachment to being an instrument in service of our founder Acharya. And that gets nourished by hearing and chanting. But the fruit of hearing and chanting is that attachment. That's the ballast. And if you don't have that attachment, without ballast, the ship is really tipsy-topsy. The disturbances carry you away. So it's the attachment to being an instrument of our founder Acharya. You cross the ocean and there's disturbances. Your question.
My question's on one of the quotes that I saw, which said, know that others can't harm you unless...
Oh, that's a big one. So you want to hear more about that one?
Yes, Maharaj.
If you want to hear a lot about it, like a lot about it, Krishna Lila. That's her favorite. You know who she is, right? Okay. Nityananda Pran can help you make contact with her and ask her. She does counseling. I mean, her specialty is trauma therapy, but it doesn't have to be trauma. It can just be people that are facing challenges and difficulties. And when you're facing challenges and difficulties, often there's a feeling of being hurt by someone or something. And this is one of her favorites. No one can hurt you unless you hurt yourself. And she'll explain it better than me. But the hurt that people feel is it's the mind. It's not someone can't hurt you. But the mind can. So how are you oriented towards whatever is coming your way? Is it coming from Krishna, or is it coming, or what is it? So it's the same as this verse that I just quoted. Yes, twin dragopam atavindraho swa karma. And that's for worldly people, or for people that are in Maya, people that are thinking in terms of their body. So yes, they have karma. And then the people that aren't thinking in terms of the body, and then there's also difficulty. But it's not. Then you're not hurting yourself, nor is someone hurting you. Krishna is lifting you. So no one can hurt you unless you hurt yourself by being in Maya. And seeing what's coming at you as, pleasant, unpleasant. No, it doesn't take away the fact of, some people are harsh and even mean and worse. Brutal. Bullies. I know some bullies. And, that's not nice. You don't have to think it's nice, but they can hurt you. If you have Krishna's shelter. They can think they're hurting you, but they can't hurt you. It's like Prabhupada speaking about Socrates. If you want to kill me, first you have to catch me. Like that. The spiritual conception of life. Or Christ wasn't killed because you can't kill him. Haridas Thakur. So there's extremes to all of this, but the principle, even for just us worldly people, is where's your shelter? And things that are coming at you, where are they coming from? And if it's coming from Krishna, then who's going to hurt you? Krishna will always protect you. Who can hurt you? But you can hurt yourself. But, she'll explain it a little differently. But, you can hear from her.
I have one more question.
Okay.
Um,
Do we have any online people that are being neglected?
it just came up, Maharaj.
Just came up. Okay, go ahead. Your question.
Well, I'm listening to all the austerities performed by Bhaktsiddhanta Maharaj, and it's rather heart-wrenching to actually hear a few of the austerities. Eating once a day seems hard, with no salt seems even hard, and eating while just being bent down, it just goes on. I'm trying to understand, is there a specific place where he understood that it needs to be done this way? That's one question. And another question
Well,
is...
your question was, does he understand somehow this is what needs to be done? Is that your question?
That's one of the questions.
Well, let me answer that question before you go on. I can't say, the purpose behind why did he do it this way. I do know, in principle, that accepting of austerities during sacred times is purifying and strengthening. And we shouldn't accept an austerity that's not within our capacity to do. But within your capacity to do, it's good. It's it's like the principle of yoga. Asanas. You don't just do something comfortably. You go stretch a little bit. Not too much, because you can hurt yourself, but a little bit, and then a little bit, then a little bit, and then you become very flexible, just by, little bit by little bit. So austerities has the same principle. That what you can do, it doesn't hurt you, but it's a little stretch, and it's good. It gives strength. It gives spiritual strength. It gives strength of clarity. It gives strength of purpose. To stay with it, you have to do that, and it helps enhance. So he did because he had the capacity. We don't. We can't do what he did. Now, I know a devotee, I know of more than one devotee, that did that very same austerity during the whole 4 months of Kartik. It was doable. It's not impossible. It's not like yummy, but they could do it. And it helped purify them. So, we don't have to imitate. It's just a principle. And there was a capacity for him, and it gave strength. So he was, as an acharya, showing, take some vrata. And we don't have to, but if we do, it gives strength. It's right in nectar devotion. Now, the second question.
My second question was, when we are trying to do an austerity, how should we approach it, and what should be the mood?
It's a
in
nectar
which
devotion. It's for the pleasure of Krishna, and it'll give us more focus on our purpose of life being for the pleasure of Krishna. And one of the obstacles is the distraction of the senses running to run here and there and enjoy objects. So you reduce that purposely for the higher purpose, not just the negative, but so you can focus more on. Therefore, it goes along with increasing hearing and chanting. Okay. So now the online question. I think we're going to end.
Question from Siva Pitalla. As a devotee, if we are facing difficulties, does it mean Krishna is kind to us?
Yes.
He is now monitoring us closely.
The operative part of the question is, if we are devotees, next.
He is now monitoring us closely, and he wants to correct us expeditiously and telling us to keep him in the center of our lives with no fail.
Well, I invite the person asking this question to go through the Govardhan retreat talks. The class number 5 addresses this question specifically. Burijan's topic was Antya-lila Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 4. And it's Sanatana Goswami being tested. Parikshate is the word that's being used. Lord Chaitanya was examining him. And he explains this in the class number 5. Exams generally make people fearful. Oh, pass, fail. I'm going to be judged by the teacher. So the tests in material life are different than spiritual tests. Spiritual tests, he makes the point, and he's right, that it's an opportunity for self-introspection. It's for us to examine ourselves. For us to examine ourselves. And where am I in the trajectory of my spiritual well-being? And situations are not like Krishna doesn't know, and he's testing us to see where are we. He's giving us an opportunity to examine ourselves. And those who are interested in examining themselves, it helps become humble, because then we'll understand, I'm not what I thought I was. And then it also helps one become inspired to reach more consistently and enthusiastically for Krishna. That's the test part. And similar to the other question, it helps us let go of things we need to really let go of. Ignorance. That's what Bhaktsiddhanta calls this fire of ordeal. It's eliminating ignorance. And ignorance means ignoring Krishna and ignoring who we are. We're busy doing, ignoring who we are. So the tests are to help us introspect and see, here I am in ignorance again. Let me turn towards Krishna. It's a self-examination, not Krishna examining us. Okay?
Question from Shrida Das. Sometimes I pray to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to give me spiritual strength and courage to speak to people while distributing books. May I know if that is considered jumping over spiritual masters?
No, thank you for that calling to Bhaktisiddhanta for strength, not jumping over. Anyone else? That's it for online? So we're going to end. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, everybody.